Hello, everyone. I'm just checking whether you can hear us. Anyone? Okay. Judith, can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you, Charlotte.
Good. Okay, hello, everyone, and welcome to GemSeek webinar on B2B customer experience featuring Forrester. I'm Sasha Molotova, a senior consultant at GemSeek, and I'm delighted to be joined by two experts in the field who will be sharing their knowledge and expertise with us today. First up, we have Maxie Schmidt, Vice President and Principal Analyst at Forrester, with over 15 years of experience in the industry and a wealth of expertise in customer experience strategy and measurement. Our second guest is Judith van Herwaarden, Head of Customer Experience at DS Smith Packaging, who brings extensive experience in implementing CX programs and driving customer centricity initiatives in the B2B space.
Thank you for having us.
Before we go further, a few housekeeping rules. After the webinar, you will receive an email with access to the recording from today's session. We'll have around 10 minutes at the end for Q&A, but please do leave your questions in the chat while the webinar is going. If we don't manage to cover them during the session, we'll address them via an email. And if you experience any technical difficulties, please send an email to accounts@gemseek.com. In the next hour, we'll cover the key CX challenges in the B2B organizations, and we'll share expert advice and best practices on how to develop a shared vision of CX, secure commitment of leaders, and drive collaboration across different stakeholders. And finally, we'll provide insights into how to increase the robustness of data and how to prove the value of CX initiatives. Now I'll give the word to Maxie, who will provide us with more background on the current state of B2B, CX, and more. Maxie, off you.
Thank you very much, Sasha. So the picture that you see in front of you has to do with two things that happen in customer experience based on my experience over the last, 11 years. And that is that we as customer experience teams are wearing blinkers. Blinkers are these things that allow horses to only look up front and not get startled from the left and the right. So they're actually a really good thing, but they also mean that the field of vision of these horses is limited. And in the customer experience setting, we often are in conditions where the company is putting blinkers on customer experience. So you should really be helping us improve customer experiences, but we don't want to do anything different. And leadership shouldn't be doing anything different. And our products and services are fine. And please don't talk to too many customers because we don't want to interrupt customers. And so there's a bit of limitations that are being put on customer experience teams. At the same time, there's also some limitations that I think we put on ourselves by the kinds of things that we as customer experience teams focus on. And to show you some of that, I brought data. Forrester is, as Sasha mentioned, where I work. Forrester gathers data annually from people in customer experience roles. And we gather data from around the globe, and we ask them about the responsibilities and the team size and the skills and so on. And I brought a few data points from that survey to share a little bit what I mean with CX blinkers. And specifically, I looked at B2B companies in our sample, so companies that are solely focused on B2B. The first thing we found is that B2B customer experience teams are mostly responsible for insights, measurement, and strategy. You can here see what people themselves selected that the teams are responsible for. The top three are the ones that I just mentioned. The bottom three surprised me: culture transformation, ROI modeling, and design research. Those are quite important things to do if you want to get head up with customer experience and make real progress as a customer experience leader. But CX leaders themselves tell us that that's not what they're focusing their time on. Second thing is when you look at skills. So here are the top 5 skills that customer experience teams say they have. Top is measurement, second is communication and interpersonal skills, you better. Then there's some general management and project management expertise. And that's quite interesting to see, right? That there's measurement, again, at the top of the skills. So I'm thinking that people are responsible for measurement and also feel quite home in it. Let's look at the bottom 5 skills. So what are the skills that least CX leaders said that they and their teams have? The bottom 5 are survey design. I see evidence of that ever so often. I don't mean this offensively, but survey design is hard. And I think CX teams recognize that it's hard. Inclusive design, accessibility review testing, so these are 2 design things, but also journey mapping and storytelling. And journey mapping and storytelling are quite important for a customer experience program, as we'll also talk about in a little bit. Now, we also asked about their tools, and while we see that most B2B customer experience teams seem to have the top 3 tools are customer feedback management, customer data platforms, and project management, then BI tools, but we find a few tools that are around analytics and around using unstructured data that are among the bottom tools that are being used. So this is just state of experience in B2B companies, a few things around responsibilities, skills, and tools.
Thank you, Maxie. Really interesting insights. Now, before we go further, let us have a quick discussion around some of the insights you already shared. So, Judith, it would be really good to know how do you help and how do you advise junior members of your team to gain and improve their skills?
Well, I was most surprised with those bottom 5 skills, right? And especially the journey mapping one. Because a CX team in any organization, to be honest, but even more so in a B2B organization, is the only team to bring the unique perspective of the customer on the business. Really having only that perspective that maps all these interactions that we have with customers. And the way you bring that to life is through journey mapping. So having that actually as a very low skill on there, I think is a first obstacle for CX teams to get the point across and get the strategic relevance of CX across.
That's really great.
Can I maybe add something? I think here's also part of the self-reflection that journey mapping is not only not easy to do, but also a good journey map has to include many different pieces of information depending on what you want to use it for. It might have to include very different pieces of information. Are you trying to show where pain points are? Are you trying to define metrics? Are you trying to design a future state experience? And that's actually quite a lot of knowledge to have to be able to do all of these things and to be able to know when to use what kind of journey map, what your feature on the journey map is hard and important, of course.
Brilliant addition, Maxie. Thank you. And a question for you. So, in your view, what is stopping companies from achieving genuine cultural transformation? Is it just the handful of companies are trying to become more customer-centric, or is it because it's a shared responsibility between a lot of different departments?
I think it's quite complicated. And what happens sometimes when we create customer experience teams is that the people in the company feel that they've outsourced the responsibility of a customer experience to that team. And of course, a customer experience team is, as Judith said, the team that will bring in insights about customers, that will make the customer top of mind. It is not the team that creates good experiences. The whole company needs to work on that. And I think that's the first thing, that misunderstanding sometimes what a customer experience team is and should be accountable for, right? Customer experience versus the methodologies to improve customer experiences. And then the other thing that I think is that we have a bit of a leadership commitment problem, but we'll get into that in a second. So I won't elaborate here on that.
Now, let's go further. We have selected 6 major topics that we as a group believe are the core to expanding the remit of CX and will help you evolve your way from measurement to proactive action. So I would give the floor to Maxie to open the next part.
Right. So based on my experience and research at Forrester, but also Judith's experience as a practitioner, a serial practitioner, and of course at a GemSeek team, there are 6 things that we want to put to you as ideas for where to focus your work. And these 6 things are developing a shared customer experience vision, securing leadership commitment, proving the value of customer experience and the customer experience team, moving from measurement to action, choosing the right technology to enable measurement and action at scale, and gaining an edge with advanced analytics. We'll go through these topics now one by one, and Judith and I, plus Sasha, will give you our insights and thoughts. And please remember, ask us questions anytime, and we'll answer them in the end. So the first thing is develop a shared customer experience vision. One of the key obstacles to getting a company to be more customer obsessed is they don't know why it matters. They don't know what to do, but also they don't know what it means. And with it, they don't know what to do and they don't know what customer experience even means. That shared vision can really help and is a stepping stone to getting much more clarity. So often when people are unsure what to do next, I ask them, do you have a shared vision of what it means to be a customer experience at company and how the experiences that your customers are having should feel? Because unless you have that, you can't guide employees, you can't guide their behaviors, you can't guide leadership in their decision-making. That's why it's important to develop that shared vision of customer experience. That North Star is, or the vision is a North Star of sorts. So we talk about this as a highly visible fixed point, enabling everyone in an organization to navigate in the right direction, identify the ways in which they can contribute to an experience that will get customers to want to engage more with you. Developing a shared vision of customer experience is something that we think is a really important first step in even understanding what you want to stand for in your experiences. I have an example here from Caterpillar. Caterpillar identified universal customer experience elements: appreciated, secure, and effortless. That is what they want customers to feel as they're going through an experience with Caterpillar. And they use these 3 elements to help employees identify what can they do differently to make sure that customers feel that they're appreciated, they feel secure in their experiences, and experiences feel effortless.
Now let's look into the second strategy that we're going to touch upon. So how do you secure leadership commitment? Now, no one will say no to the principle of customer experience. Actually, it's the most logical thing to any executive. Until you need investment or people that competes against other strategies that they're much more familiar with, investing in machines or investing in plants, and then quite quickly that yes and that enthusiasm becomes a no. So how do you get leadership to really care about this and truly commit in a way that when markets are down, you still have that budget secured for your CX strategy? The only answer is through showing the value. What impact will your CX program have on revenue, cost, and risk? Show them the money in this. And that's a tough one, as data is often limited in B2B and proving revenue impact is hard to claim. But let's explore for a second these 3 pillars. So the revenue pillar. Start with understanding what metrics matter to your business. Is it volumes, share of wallet, repeat purchases, margins? And take that data and hold that against your customer satisfaction data. What do you see? Are your highly satisfied customers behaving differently than those that are not satisfied? Do you see a change in spending after they've told you they're promoters of your brand? The second pillar is on cost, and this is often the most straightforward one because cost reductions and efficiencies are actually quite a one-to-one relationship and correlation. But be careful how you phrase cost efficiencies, because there's no executive that's going to be excited if you tell them you can actually let go of 10% of his people. So think about how you phrase efficiencies in costing. Talk about how the cost to serve of a customer can go down, and that leaves room for those resources to actually move from transactional work to more value-added work to support that growth that you're creating with your CX strategy. And finally, let's talk about risk. What are your competitors doing? And expand your view of competition to those tech disruptors as well. Is Silicon Valley looking at cracking your industry? Because the risk of that is significant. The minute these tech companies come between you and your customers, that's a risk of commoditizing your products. But we've chosen here the word resilience, not risk, because having a customer obsession in your organization also means you're on top of changes in your customer's world. You are agile in your response. You're able to pivot quickly when needed to remain relevant to your customer's reality. And there's ample research around how being close to customers positively impacts, for instance, the risk of product launch failures. A couple of years ago, when I worked in Heidelberg Cement, which is now Heidelberg Materials, we brought this value story to life by analyzing multiple years of customer spending data in combination with their satisfaction data. What we found was crystal clear. We actually found that over all those years we investigated, there hasn't been a single customer that was a detractor, so unsatisfied, for 2 consecutive years, which means that either the business managed to resolve his issues and make this unsatisfied customer satisfied, or he churned and left us. And when we analyzed price levels against satisfaction levels, we actually found that in over 90% of cases, an increase in satisfaction score was paired by the customer paying a higher price as well, which proves the case that if customers perceive more value from your business and from the experience you're delivering them, they are willing to pay for that.
Which gives you the business case, right? And this is a slide from Forrester. We make it our business to try to collect examples that might help you to show that others have achieved business benefits from customer experience improvements. And you can see here again, revenue, cost, and resilience. There are a few examples in there. These are specifically B2B examples. One of them, for example, Telstra. They had a lot of different platforms. That's a telco company, right? There are a lot of different places how a customer would communicate with Telstra. And if you're thinking about a big company who has a telco provider, they don't want to have 5 different platforms where they have to contact their provider for different issues. So they created one platform for contacting the provider, and that reduced their calls from these customers that had issues and didn't know where to go by 9%. In the SMB space, actually, that reduction was up to 22%. This is just one example. You see right there in the middle. There are many other examples of improving customer experience and improving revenue, cost, and resilience. Usually, your organizations will be focused on cost. You'll also want to focus on revenue, but it's harder to prove. But the resilience part is something that you shouldn't underestimate. And as Judith said, this is resilience in terms of being in market, but it's also resilience in terms of brand. It's resilience in terms of financial rating, regulatory resilience. And that really matters a great deal to your leaders and decision makers. Now, we talked about leaders and decision makers, right? And we talked about leadership commitment. How many of you think that you have leadership commitment? Think about it for a second. How many of you think that you have leaders that say they are committed but aren't really? I'm imagining some of you will be like, oh yeah, that's us. Yeah, I can do that. You know what? There's one problem that I want to talk about. Leaders kid themselves. Leaders think they are committed, but they aren't. They're behaving in ways that is not committed. And so Richard Sheehan, a colleague of mine, and I, we came up with a little checklist that you can use to show leaders, or maybe first you do this for yourself. Okay, bear with me. So you figure out whether leaders are actually behaving in ways that align with how customer-centric they say they are. So do they do this? Do they spend time with customers? Can they speak knowledgeably about customers and customer needs? Do they address customer queries and issues themselves? There's a few things here. I want to maybe highlight one. Do they prioritize insights over timelines on the right-hand side? Or is it, let's just get this out? Do they define customer-centric metrics and targets as opposed to whatever is easiest to measure? Do they top right, hire and promote for customer experience as opposed to promoting the people who bring in revenue despite creating worse experiences? So you can look at this and you'll get the recording, but here are a few things that show you whether leaders actually behave in ways that are customer-centric. Now, up to you what you do with this. If you've really dialed into your leadership and you know them really well, you can confront them with this. If not, then it might not be super great for your job security to say to leaders, are you actually doing all of these things? And I've found that you're not doing all of these things. But this is important for you to know, because it's important for you to know how much you can actually lean on them. Remember that exercise where you fall back and people catch you? If you say no to all of those, leaders won't catch you. So then maybe don't fall back. So either then focus on the tactics and strategies that Judith had given you to actually get commitment, or leave for somewhere else where leaders are actually going to catch you when you fall. So we talked about proving the value, and I want to talk about that a little bit more because there's two aspects to this that I think are really important, and maybe you haven't heard about them enough. The first aspect of that is when you are creating a business case, when you are able to create a model of what an improvement brings, you need to find ways to bring that across in simple stories that people can remember and that people will like to tell in the next meeting. So something like a simple business case, one sentence business case. And note, this never starts with investment. It never starts with the cost needed. It starts with what you want to do, why, what will it bring, what are the costs, what will the ROI be. So for example, we propose to improve our communication about delivery delays, to improve customers' trust. The number of inquiries about late deliveries goes down, which will bring lower cost to serve by 2 million a year and increase opportunities to bid at a cost of $250,000, euros, cents, whatever, pounds, delivering ROI of 700%. There's a lot of data that goes into this and a lot of work that goes into this, but you find a very simple way to show this. And as you present the business case, this is your first slide. And then you lead with the rest of the information, the why and the how and all of the different things that actually went into this, what you invest and so on.
But actually, even if the numbers are perfect, it's all about how you tell the story to your stakeholders. When we think back to those skills that Maxie showed at the beginning, we found storytelling quite at the bottom there as well. And that's really an obstacle in our way because we need to understand the context of our stakeholders to understand what they care about and how we should tell that business case story. What are the metrics they care about? And that's not a one size fits all. That's different for different level executives, for different function executives. So really make sure you put that context over the story.
Right. And to add to the point, Judith, you made, one thing I see where I think we lose a lot of traction as customer experience professionals is in the way that we create dashboards. Many dashboards I see seem to be focused a lot on a person that goes to the dashboard, somehow takes out data and analyzes it and draws a conclusion. Your responsibility when you create dashboards is to share the story. What is the story? What is the takeaway? Take everything out, like Michelangelo, that when he made that David statue, there's a big block of stone, and you could of course show the whole block of stone, but it's not interesting. So what Michelangelo does is he chips away the things that don't belong to the statue, and out comes the statue, and that's what you need to do. So basically, don't show all the data you have, but chip away the things that aren't important to highlight the things that really are important, that have a conclusion that you want people to go away from when they look at the dashboard. And to do that, there is a tool that we created at Forrester. It's called a dashboard planning canvas. When you download the presentation, you'll get this, and you can look at this in more detail. I want to put your attention just to the five big black things. Can't tell. So these are kinds of questions you should ask yourself as you're developing your dashboards in order to create dashboards that look more like Michelangelo and not like a stone block. What are the objectives? What is the audience? What is the content? What technology are you using? What frequency do you want to update and share this with? And what action and workflow do you want to trigger with this dashboard? You can see a few more details that you should ask yourself. I don't want to spend too much time on this now, but maybe take that analogy with you, the stone block and the Michelangelo that I would like you to produce. Here's an example of a Michelangelo, a CX Michelangelo, and that's actually David and this. I don't want you to produce the Michelangelo. That's the artist. I understand that. I misspoke. So this is an example from Agilent. Agilent is a company that is in the business of life science and measurement instruments. So they have an amazing dashboard that they're creating where on the left-hand side, you can see there's the top of it, customer experience update by journey, the decision journey, onboarding journey, use journey, and so on. They show how well the journey is going and what are the main points of expectations from customers. They then show in the middle what the customer experience priorities are that they're following and how they will help in the journeys. And then they do something really clever. The right-hand side of this shows that they are also having a space in the dashboard for something interesting, surprising, and new. in this case, for example, research Q2 highlights, where they can show every time they show the dashboard, they can show something else so that they keep people engaged. And this is how you should be thinking about dashboards. So the David statue that you're supposed to create. So be Michelangelo and create David. The second thing that I wanted you to think about, apart from storytelling and dashboards and creating a clear story, is holding yourself accountable. Holding yourself accountable as a customer experience team. And my idea for you here, what to do is to prove your value and to hold yourself accountable, create some sort of balanced scorecard that shows how you are contributing to different goals. And like a balanced scorecard, there are several dimensions to it. And let me walk through it one by one. The first dimension is project and business success. So how does the customer experience function contribute to the success of projects or the success of the organization? That has to do with the revenue, cost, and resilience goals that you help drive. We talked about that earlier, these 3 big levers. Second thing, if I was you, I would put on my scorecard is to figure out how are you working with stakeholders. So are your stakeholders aware of what CX function does? Are they loyal to you? So would they come to you unless even if you're not asking them to? And what is their experience of working with you? The third is the operational efficiency. How much productivity do you have? How efficient are you using your own team's resources? Are you putting your resources in the right things? Are you quick enough in the things you do? And the last one is the knowledge dissemination and creation, both in the team. So how good is the customer experience function at what they do? That's back to the skills we talked about earlier. But also, how are you helping an organization to improve the kind of culture and the kind of customer experience knowledge that they need? I recommend that you take this idea and you maybe spend like half an hour each week to think about what are the metrics in each of the 4 quadrants that you could measure. Do this for 2-3 weeks, and then start actually measuring these metrics. You can then go out to stakeholders and say, hey, we're trying to really make sure that you have a good experience, we help you with the business success, and we help you get more CX knowledge. What are the kinds of metrics that we could define, like a quarterly business review, to make sure that we as a customer experience function are helping you, stakeholders, be successful, and our work creates some additional value. So that's my suggestion for what to do in the next 3 weeks.
Okay, so let's now dive into from measurement to action, which is actually the title of our webinar here. Linking back to those skills we saw in the focus areas in B2B, we're very focused on the measurement bit. And even though I want to say that's probably not an issue, I'm sure if I ask you to put your hand up and say who is all struggling with getting sufficient samples and response rates in their surveys, in B2B, we know this is an issue, right? Simply because you have way less customers or daily unique transactions compared to a B2C environment. So just getting samples through a survey is difficult, and having a repetitive or frequent survey is at risk of frustrating those few customers that you have. So in B2B, I think in measurement, we should try to look beyond just the survey data that we have and move towards using surveys just to calibrate other data models. So for instance, what if we find through a survey that after 2 late deliveries, our customers get frustrated? Well, why should we then continue to ask our customers if they're frustrated when they've had 2 late deliveries? Instead, we should track the late deliveries and proactively reach out to those customers that had to, because we know they're going to be frustrated. So it takes a bit of a rethink in that measurement area. Now, let me be a bit rebellious and challenge the title of today's webinar for a second, because I think there are a couple more steps between measurement to action and even after action. How do we actually use measurements to create meaningful insights that the business is looking for and that can really drive action? All too often in businesses, we see endless reports of data, dashboards, and charts that are shared with executives and with leadership without any conclusions on the slides. So after you have your leadership team sit through a presentation of 90 minutes of charts and data, nothing happens. And why is that? It's because we haven't translated the data into relevant insights. And there's that word relevant again, right? So that goes back to the point I made earlier, to understand who you're presenting to and put it in the right context. How is this actually going to help your audience achieve their goals? What are the insights that are going to help them be successful? So good insights drive action. Great, we're doing something. But do our customers actually know about us doing something? In B2B, customers are much more invested in your business and in the relation than in a B2C setting, because they look good if their suppliers do good. So they will always be willing to invest in giving you feedback if they know that you're doing something with it. So not acting on feedback is actually the quickest way to tank your response rates and drive away customers. So make sure you close that loop with important or unsatisfied customers. Ensure insights find themselves incorporated to the account plan so customers see you picking up on that feedback, and create those business cases for your company to invest in improving certain strategic journeys. But keep your customers in the loop. Furthermore, in the complexity of B2B relations, I don't think we can determine exactly what the action should be as much as we're more able to do in B2B. Rather, you set up the process on when to act for your organization and leave room for how to act. It's more of a framework model than a fixed design solution. And then finally, as a last point to this title, you see I added the impact part, because it doesn't stop at action. A lot of action without actually delivering business impact will not keep your leadership excited for very long. In fact, it would feel like a lot of effort has gone to waste. But how do you move from making real impact and capturing it? How do you progress your program from a nice to have that fixes transactional issues to something strategic that drives differentiation and actually wins you contracts? Again, that starts with how well you've been able to develop the right level of aspiration in that vision. Did your management buy into the fact that this is going to be a game changer on the market, that this is actually a business strategy and not just a churn prevention tactic? So evolving from measurement to insight, to action, to impact. That should be the title of today's webinar.
And can I add, Judith, something to it briefly? When we understand how decisions are being made in our companies, we can think about the impact we want to have with these decisions and on these decisions. So think about maybe the digital team meets once a week to figure out if the website looks okay. The account team meets once a quarter to do account planning. Maybe a strategy team meets once a year to define the strategy for going forward. That's important to you, because then you know when to share what kind of information with these people, as opposed to sharing when you have something to share. Oh, our relationships are always back. Gosh, let me share this information so I can make it actionable. That is not actionable because people aren't ready to hear it. People are ready to hear these things as they're making decisions. So to do this point, right, if you understand what decisions people are making, you can then decide what data to share with them at that point, so the decisions are more customer-centric.
Exactly.
Oops. Thank you, Maxie and Judith. These are really great points, and they really represent the right mix of strategies, tactics, people, and workflows that we need to have a solid CX foundation. But one may say that it's nearly impossible to do that without technology nowadays, which brings us to our fifth topic, choosing the right technology. It is in fact technology that helps you move from simply surveying to continuous measurement and proactive action, and ensuring that your CX initiatives are making a tangible impact for your customers, but also for your organizations. And while many companies may think the CX is an easy task, it's actually not that simple, and companies often turn to technology as an enabler to help them achieve their KPIs. One of the main challenges is setting the right expectations towards technology. Let us look at what we found to be the main drivers when investing in customer experience measurement platform. So collecting relevant insight is the first step towards getting CX right. Knowing how satisfied are your customers and what they return is quite useful. But for the insights to be reliable and actionable, you need to ensure that you're asking the right questions to the right audience at the right moment. So imagine I'm a customer of an office equipment supplier and I had the regular orders, but over time, these orders became smaller in value and less often. The commercial team will instantly notice the impact of the account revenue, but what's causing it will not be known. So knowing the health of your account is vital, not only to ensure that you're not leaving money on a table, but to be able to plan the supply and demand of your offering and to be able to actually keep that relationship and keep that customer to reduce the customer churn as well. So how can your CX program and technology help in this case? An automated surveying can ensure that you are sending relationship surveys to the budget holders and help you gauge the account sentiment. Am I happy with the supplier? Is your product good value? Am I looking for an alternative? And then the transactional survey can be sent to the person who has submitted the order to find out how satisfied they are with the order, what can be improved, and when they're planning to order next. But what good is data which is analyzed in isolation? Unified reporting will help you go beyond traditional metrics. It will help you add that additional level of understanding of who are your customers, what they're doing, why they're doing it. So let's say that you already know that I'm purchasing less of your office supplies. You know that I'm looking for alternative vendors because you're not a top of the mind supplier. If you're bringing your CRM data together with the survey data, you may notice that, for example, your marketing emails are bouncing back. They're not reaching the decision maker, not the person reliable for the purchase. So you're missing the opportunity to share with me your sustainability results that are super important for me as choosing a supplier, but also you're missing the opportunity to share your latest products and offers. And you're also missing just to tell us that you are there for us and we can purchase from you. Okay, so now we have all that knowledge and we need to do something with it. And as Judith and Maxie mentioned earlier, acting on the insight is really that make or break moment for customer experience. So actionable intelligence is vital. Real-time reporting tailored to the role and responsibilities of each team member can make the significant difference. So if we go back to the example, what will you do to solve the problem? Emails are not reaching my mailbox and positioning yourself as top of mind supplier. The right technology could alert the marketing team and they can tell them to check my emails why they're bouncing back. They can check the emails. Apparently it's wrong in a CRM. They have fixed it. Now I get those emails. Problem solved. And finally, I think that's the key point of the technology. It is the uninterrupted information flow. It is essential to connect internal systems to ensure that the full automation is possible. All valuable data is analyzed, reported, acted upon, and existing processes are actually enriched with customer data. But while building your CX program, it is essential to view technology as an enabler and accelerator to achieving your goals. However, it's quite important to establish a clear vision and to ensure that organization readiness and avoiding adding complexity to existing processes. So to set a solid foundation for your CX transformation, it is recommended to start with the end in mind. Define your long-term goals with a 3-year strategy, for example. Break them down into immediate objectives and intermediate steps towards your success. It's also important to assess your organization readiness, know your current data, technology availability, internal processes, identify existing capabilities and gaps. Moreover, identify key stakeholders across the entire organization to actually ensure there's cross-team and cross-department collaboration and position CX as a company-wide mission. And when choosing a vendor, there is no one-size-fits approach. It's crucial to choose a vendor that based on your objectives, on your long-term goals, and ensure that their platform can facilitate your roadmap of activities and initiatives. The technology should complement and improve your internal processes and not only add additional layer of complexity to the current processes. Consider the data you're collecting, the current sources of information when choosing a vendor. So it is essential to look at the impact that the new technology will have on your teams, determine who will be involved, how their day-to-day work may change, and how they'll use the insights provided. So with a solid foundation and careful consideration of all factors, technology can be a really valuable tool for achieving your CX transformation goals. And while technology is changing the way businesses operate and embedding customer obsession into organization, companies should consistently build on their programs with additional analytics. So from tailored text analytics and deep dives into root causes of satisfaction to predictive analytics, there is endless pool of options to actually go beyond that survey data, to actually break the issue with surveys not responded, with people not engaging with us and not providing impact, their feedback. But there are two that I feel like really important, and I'd like to share them. So it is securing internal buy-in for your CX program and increasing the impact of your initiatives and scaling them. And now let me dive into the recent success story that we had. So Roche Diagnostic has a very comprehensive CX program that is rolled out in over 50 countries. It captures transactional and relationship feedback. Response rates, however, are quite low, between 8 to 12%, meaning that there are a lot of customers that will not respond to the survey and will not know how satisfied they are, what they think, what are their key challenges. Roche wanted to create even more opportunities and improve the experience of every individual customer through closed-the-loop activities, and to get better understanding what drives that satisfaction and prioritize improvements. So to help them achieve their objective, we deployed predictive NPS model to assign an NPS score to all customers who didn't respond. We supplemented also the predictions with root cause analysis to capture the relationship between the drivers and satisfaction metrics and identify how these influence one another. For this project, we used more than 14 months of historical data, including survey and operational data. This gave us around 100 variables to work with. And the findings were really great and really useful for the team. They understand the satisfaction across the group of silent customers and provided the opportunity to close the loop proactively with them without those customers actually getting really dissatisfied and leave the company. The likelihood to identify a silent detractor has increased to up to 4 times, creating opportunities to really reach out on time and save accounts worth millions on annual basis. We have also helped Roche identify what drives customer satisfaction and what improvements should be prioritized. The analysis highlighted the importance of effective communication, for example. So Roche focused on providing customers with status updates on case progress, so allowing customers to actually stay informed through the entire process and really decrease that feeling of anxiety, particularly in situations that technical issues affected their experience. I hope this gave you a bit of flavor of what you could achieve with the right strategy, technology, and advanced analytical project. So now let us move on to the Q&A session. But before I go through your questions, I have one that I really would like to ask Judith and Maxie. And it is, why do you think customer experience team very rarely work on ROI modeling? Is there a specific reasons they stay away from it, or it's seen as a responsibility of other teams?
So, I mean, Judith, I can go first. I did research many years ago how B2B companies make the case for customer experience. And it was pretty clear that there are challenges that hold B2B companies back. The first challenge is that we don't have enough data from customers. And that's because we have sometimes lower sample sizes. So it's for us harder to compare customer experience scores to actual behaviors. Second problem is that there's often a very long distance between something that happens as an experience and a decision. Either people are locked into a 5-year contract, or people have some other reasons why they're not making decisions. And the third one is that we don't quite know who, among all the contacts we have in the company, actually influences the decision. So now we have a relationship survey to decision makers. We also have user-directed surveys, but we don't know which of the customer experience, the decision maker or user, is actually more impactful in the company. And so maybe 3 quick things how to solve this, right? The first thing is that we don't have the data. And some companies that we've looked at, like EMC Dell, for example, the customer experience team has taken responsibility for the data. Or Schindler has put incentives in place for sales that the data is always up to date and customers are easier to reach. The second one was that we have these long-term decision circles, right? And there, if we find metrics that help us understand now, more close to the now point, what will happen later, that's something. So for example, like the Roche example we just had, right? We have some leading indicators of what customers are going to do in the future. But also we might have metrics that are more close to now. So back to Schindler, the elevator company I mentioned earlier, they figured out that goodwill costs are higher for customers that are unhappy. You have to, as my words, take them to the Ritz for dinner more often. And that's something that you can measure now. So the long decision cycle plays a role, but the business metric that you're looking at is actually something shorter term. And the last problem that we talked about was that we don't know who has the influence. And we have actually seen companies where the decision maker influence on the decision is less than the user influence. In most cases, that won't be the case, because if you imagine a big contract, whatever the user or the person who works with it says is often not as important as what decision makers do. But actually check this out. Check whether your transactional surveys among users are more predictive of behavior, or whether your decision maker surveys are more predictive of behavior. So I went for quite a lot. Judith, anything that you want to share?
Yeah, no, this is perfect. I had myself on mute when I was trying to answer earlier, but my first response would be because it's hard. And that's exactly reasons why it's hard. I think especially that data availability and well, I'm in B2B manufacturing, especially there, the businesses grew, they're very fragmented, systems are disconnected, data is limited, but also very differently used, misaligned. So it's hard to get past that. What I'm doing right now in DS Smith that's a multi-year journey, right? To start to connecting these systems and actually create a data asset that you can use strategically. And in order for the business to commit to that and see why they're doing that, that goes back to our first strategy, creating that vision. So if we can really get leadership to buy in to this is what we want to be as a company in the future, then we can start working our way back, this future back mapping to see, okay, how are we going to get there? And how are we also going to solve some of these very hard problems that we have?
Brilliant, thank you. So we'll go through the questions that are in chat. Question from Kevin: how do you overcome challenges in an organization with multiple teams feeling they own the CX challenge and being defensive towards others trying to play a part?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Maybe I take that one. That's a bit of the uniqueness you have as a CX team, right? Because you don't own any of the functional interactions with customers, but yet you're determining the strategy. So you're really working with all these different functions to help them do better and actually help them do better based on these insights. It starts with a mindset, right? So the first mindset is that everybody in the business understands they impact either directly or indirectly that customer experience. And then the way I would always position the CX team is that we are really there to empower the functions, to actually empower them with insights, to empower them with direction, with tools, with digital technology, to help them be able to deliver those better customer experiences. We're not prescribing, we're empowering.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that one would be good for Maxie. So how could you create a dashboard which would visualize the CX through the customer journey?
So how to create a dashboard that shows customer experience along the journey. If you find me on LinkedIn, write to me and I might be able to send you an example of something that we have in the research. But it is not exactly rocket science, yet so hard. You start with your journey map. You simplify that journey map down to the most important steps, and then you take that journey map. Now, don't go anywhere into Excel and create charts. Take the journey map itself and put metrics onto the journey map in the context. So for example, if one step in the journey is to try to call to understand why the invoice isn't correct, that's exactly where you're going to put the metric, number of customers who have to call for invoice correction. So what's behind what I'm saying is that we have often a lot of effort put into creating journey maps. And then when it's about dashboards, suddenly I see charts, contact center data, operational data, survey data, and it's not in the context of the journey anymore. So basically, the main thing I want you to do is take a journey, simplify it, and then think about where you need to measure, and then put the metrics just on that journey map and show that.
Brilliant, thank you. And we have a question from Ahmed, but what strategy you need to consider in low customer-centric culture?
What strategy in low customer-centric culture? Well, in the background, coming from B2B manufacturing, I think both businesses I've worked in come from really that operational and production focus. I would really also focus on the people element of this, what you're trying to do. So yes, your metrics and stuff like that are giving insights and are kind of talking points to start a discussion in your business of how you're actually going to survive the next 10 years. Is that gap that you have to your customers, if you're not customer centric, how big of a risk is that? And how are you slowly going to transform hearts and minds to think about that customer as something very important and central really to your business success?
And can I add to that something that often the advice is to start small and create some success stories. And I think that advice is sound, but do also for your own sanity. You will hit a glass ceiling of sorts when you do that, because you can only do so much with bottom-up small programs and small successes, because at some point you will hit things that are systemic issues. And that's that glass ceiling. And you'll only cross that glass ceiling if leaders are on board and they're actually supporting you, so that you can say yes to all of these elements on the checklist we talked about earlier. And that's the point where you then have to decide whether to go big or go maybe to another company, because you just don't see that the work you're putting in and is worth it, and the way that you're putting head against the wall is really not getting you anywhere. So I don't mean to sound pessimistic. It's just that you need to understand that there's this shift, the glass ceiling of sorts, which you can only break through when you have leaders that actively commit and support you.
How much data did you need to be able to predict the NPS for non-respondents? Well, that's a favorite question of ours. The more, the better is what we typically say, but in practice, it's not as much data as we need. So we needed at least 300 unique cases, customer accounts that goes at least 1 year back. And in terms of additional data points, we needed around 10 CRM or operational variables that would have at least 2 times specific behavioral variables. So that would be, let's say, help call, cases raised with the account manager, anything that you pretty much would have in your CRM system that will show us the behavior of that individual or account for that matter. So although we're doing a prediction and there is a lot of statistical and scientific work going behind it, we don't need millions and millions of data points. There are smart ways to go around it. And we did work with clients that didn't have huge pool of data, but their projects were very, very successful at the end. So we'll send a bit more detail on that one later on. Okay. Question from Chloe. Do you have any best practices for closing the loop principles or examples of how to keep customers informed of progress you are making to act on their feedback?
Can I just briefly, Judith, before, can you all Google ArcBest? ArcBest is a logistics provider. Who does that? They have a website that's solely dedicated to the kinds of things that they've done with feedback. Judith, sorry.
That's a great example, actually. I was just going to talk to our own examples, right? Just keep it simple. Make sure that you send an email or a bit of a newsletter to customers that have participated to your survey to thank them and to highlight what are the insights that you did and what are the projects that you're working on. It's that kind of course, you have that immediate loop for important customers, unsatisfied customers, where you really want to work with them to resolve their issues. But it's also that big loop to really appreciate the customer feedback and keep them updated on what you've done. And actually, you can go one step further in involving them in the solutions that you're going to create to those issues. So even if you've got those close relations, or you've got a board of customer champions, or however you want to call them, do co-creation around solutions with them could be a next step.
And as you're doing that, one very simple thing that you can do right now is to close the loop before you even reach out for feedback. I just published an example a few weeks ago on LinkedIn from a bank. This is a B2C bank. That does not mean you cannot learn from it. In the survey invitation, they're telling their customers your feedback matters, which everybody does. But then they say, here are three specific decisions that they've made in the past time period with customer feedback. And they name these decisions specifically. And that is something that you can all do, right? You can all give customers a feeling that answering your survey is actually worth their time.
I think we have time for one more question. So what emerging trends or technologies do you believe will have the most significant impact on the future of customer experience? And how can organizations effectively prepare and adapt to stay ahead in this rapidly evolving landscape? It feels like it's going to the artificial intelligence and ChatGPT theme that's going around. I personally am a huge fan of technology. I do believe that it does help accelerate, it does help improve the process, but it should be treated with a lot of cautious, and there always should be human mind and strategy behind it. So if you look at like recent, I guess, developments, having like a some tool like ChatGPT help you out with closing your like cases, open cases, and giving us suggestions and supporting actually the agent, not dealing straight away with the client, is probably the best way. So just use artificial intelligence, use those algorithms to help your agents be more reactive, be more have more targeted actions, and have real-time recommendations what to do. That's probably staying ahead of what's happening in the world today.
Yeah, I would just supplement that with some conversations we've recently had about that. And I think whatever technology comes our way, we need to think about how we want to use it, right? And conversations we had were about, okay, there's two ways in which we can start using that technology. One way is really to start scaling our human abilities. So take everything that's in our minds and somehow make that much more scalable for customers to access anytime, anywhere, any place. But also use it to elevate our expertise and the people in our organization. So how do we use that technology to actually have better insight, to work with our customers around potential future scenarios and kind of plan the way forward as true partners?
Yeah. And on that note, maybe start thinking about how you can be more efficient and effective in your job. I put a cheeky little tip on that line in the chat. If you're trying to hire customer experience talent, try ChatGPT to write your job descriptions as you're trying to hire. Small things like that, right? It's not always the big changes, but using it in ways that are making you able to focus on other work, on work that you want to focus on, for example, measuring your success as a team and proving the value of the team, like that balance scorecard I talked about earlier. This is a little cheeky tip.
Well, we are back on time, so thank you, everyone. Thank you, Judith and Maxie. I will be sending the recordings and the slides shortly after the webinar is over. Have a great day ahead, and speak to you soon.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.